Hi, and welcome to a reading of my book, Faces of Fear. Chapter 1. The snow was ice cold, like daggers, as clumps of it hit my legs, soaking my jeans. I wasn't dressed for this, damn it. The hill was slippery, and as I ran, my tennis shoes couldn't gather any traction. Crap. My mind raced in a frenzy as the sounds got louder. Bigfoot. How could more than one be chasing me? I believed they existed, sure, as most outdoors-loving rational people do, but to actually see one? Unheard of. The stars above are gone, shrouded behind the thick dark clouds that rolled in. Brain lagging like an old Macintosh computer, I couldn't process what I just saw. My face illuminated in the night sky was enough to be an imprint in my mind, probably forever. Not much of an artistic person, I had very little knowledge of paintings beyond seeing them in art classes. Sid most likely had seen them in middle school or elementary school. Sid, I had no idea how old she was. We must get away from the things chasing me. Jolting back to reality, I slipped and slid on my butt for a good few yards before I struggled to stand and kept running. The stench of musk wasps in the wind, a heady mixture of wet fur mixed with urine and other gross smells, violated my nose. Bigfoot wasn't clean, and there were too many to count. Turning my face slightly as I neared the end of the hill, I counted at least 10 running from the woodline. Their faces were dark, and I couldn't make out any expressions, but their silhouettes were clear as day, and so was the covering of matted fur. Inhaling the air, shards of snow falling made me choke. It was snowing. The trailer and fire were visible, and then I saw Sid waving her arms. A maternal instinct I didn't know I had kicked in. I couldn't let the beasts get to her. I just couldn't. The message of run slammed into me as I finally hit the pavement and slipped on the ice. "They're coming," Sid shouted. I whipped my head back and saw multiple Sasquatch about 500 feet from me. I had to hurry. My leg impacted the metal bar hanging down as the ice sent my body careening into the back of the trailer. Screaming in pain, I somehow reached up and pulled myself inside next to Sid. "Hurry!" Mouths foaming and growling, the beasts had just leapt from the hill onto the snow-covered pavement and were seconds from reaching us. I screamed in anguish as I pulled the door shut and slammed the door handles down. The chain fumbled in my shaking hands as I wrapped it tight and clipped it close. Howls filled the air at the same time as large bodies hit the back of the truck trailer. They reached us, but they couldn't get in. "I don't even know your name," Sid stammered, standing with fear reflecting widely in her big eyes. "Bonnie," I absentmindedly replied, before taking her small hand into mine. She was still cold. "My name is Bonnie." Both of us shivering, her fingers curled around mine, and I squeezed, attempting to reassure her we were safe now, as much as we could be. "Come, let's sit. We need to figure out what to do now." The fire's warmth was palpable as the trailer was slightly rocked by the beasts outside. Then suddenly, the movement stopped. I exhaled a breath I had no idea I was even holding. My lungs felt ragged and tired, much like my body. "They stopped. Are they gone?" Sid asked. "I don't know, but they can't get in." She exhaled too, much as I did. Curling up on the seat cover she was lying on prior, her eyes fluttered with exhaustion. "I saw them in the woodline. Sasquatch. Real-life Bigfoot. I can hardly believe it. I never believed in mythical stuff, but I saw them too, Bonnie. I wish I could tell my granddad. He was always talking about them. He would find this cool. We have no choice but to stay in here now. We have enough wood, I think, if we are conservative with it." "Your granddad sounds like a hit man," I said, changing the subject. "Yes," she said, "he is." She looked away. "Was. And okay, I won't add any more wood to it unless you say." A huge yawn escaped from her mouth, and she closed her eyes. I wanted to say more, but realized she is a child, and it's most likely best that I keep my grown-up thoughts to myself. Scaring her won't help the situation. I had a feeling the situation we were in was darker than I could even realize. She was handling it surprisingly well, and I didn't want to change that. The trailer cracked with soft sounds from the rudimentary fire. It was silent otherwise. I could hear nothing beyond the chained-up doors, but I needed to check. Standing, I walked cautiously to the wall nearest to me, placing a still slightly shaking hand on the cold metal and slowly pressing my left ear to the wall as well. I could hear muffled sounds of wind, but nothing else. No footsteps, no breathing, nothing. In my mind, I pictured a legion of beasts standing silent on the hillside, staring down at the truck. The image was startling. "It's not real," I muttered. The metal was real, so was the warmth from the fire. But now I questioned what just took place outside of the trailer. I was delirious with sleep deprivation. Sid's breath began to slow as she fell into a deep sleep, one I was envious of, but I didn't dare sleep, not yet. Removing my hand from the truck, I paced slowly down the length of the trailer and then on the back wall. Thoughts continued to pour into my mind in a rapid succession. Where did the creatures come from? Why did we appear in all places? Were there any other humans around out there in the woods? The answers wouldn't come, and I knew it, not unless we could leave the truck and get away. but at the moment, that wasn't a possibility. My feet were still wet from the snow, and I needed to take my shoes off so I could dry them out. Sighing, I crept past Sid and circled around to my side of the fire to the chair cover on the ground. My jeans were wet too, but I couldn't take them off. It was far too cold in the truck. It's going to be okay, I whispered to myself. In all the YouTube survival videos I had ever watched, the main recurring theme was staying calm and using the resources around you. And also, rest. You couldn't do much if you were unable to think straight. The fire was soothing, I had to admit. Sparks shot out intermittently into the darkness, sending amber and orange lights to dance beautifully on the metal ceiling. The stars outside flashed in my mind. It looked like a Van Gogh painting. The effervescent, swirling manner in which he painted was what I saw just a bit ago in the night sky. How confounding it was, though. I slipped my shoes off and then my socks, placing them haphazardly near the fire so they would dry. Cold hit my bare skin, and I shivered. This was a problem, not having memory of how I even got here in the first place. Same with Sid. Was it a bout of amnesia? Were we dead? We got there somehow, but how? Figuring that out was a problem. But first, how could we survive in this trailer for days on end? There were some supplies I grabbed from the cab of the truck. I needed to see if there was any food. The fire kept me in one spot, though. It was beginning to warm my legs, and a sense of peace washed over me. Help me after you help yourself. The words from the huge me in the sky, help myself, a version of myself, or me, the literal me? How could a sky me warn me to help me? It was too confusing. Maybe I had experienced hallucinations. One hell of a one, but one nonetheless. Instinctively, I reached down and touched my leg. It was real. I glanced at Sid, the young girl across from me. She was real. The fire popped again, sending large embers up into the air. It was real and they were beautiful. Never had I felt so much gratitude for a hastily made fire. Life was funny, taking such a weird turn. Fighting sleep, my eyes became heavy, and they felt like they would close without my consent. I wanted to sleep. I needed to, just for a while. But before I could, the trailer rocked violently. Crap, I muttered, bolting upright. My heart pounded wildly in my chest as I glanced around the trailer. Something outside had shoved us. Only once, though, as it stopped. The fire was still burning, and Sid was still asleep. I held my breath and glanced at the chain wrapped securely around the back door latch. A loud roar rang out into the air as one thought flew into my mind. That's why they locked it from the inside. Bonnie, my name. Bonnie! My leg hurt badly as heavy eyelids opened. Someone was calling me. Are you awake, Bonnie? I'm scared. Sid. I saw her sitting on the worn-out cover, cradling her legs tightly in her arms. Sleep was shoved off for reality. We were still stuck in the truck trailer with a now dwindling fire, and the air was cold. Grunting, I slowly sat up. Why are you scared? She hesitated as her voice cracked. I kept hearing things outside. What things? Cracking of branches close by and a bird cawing so loudly. Then it got silent, completely silent, Bonnie. Sid stood suddenly and flailed her arms in the air in a fit of what looked to me like fear. Whoa, it's okay. It's not okay, Bonnie. The big feet are here. Then I heard them. Pushing up off the cold metal of the trailer floor, I stood slowly, my body stiff as a rod. Hang on, Sid, calm down. They left last night. We heard them running away. What did you hear? The fire was dwindling dangerously low at this point, and the embers were barely visible. I needed to add wood to it, or it would go out completely. I heard a very weird low sound, and it made my head hurt to hear it. It hurt your head, like the frequency was that loud? No, it wasn't loud. Low, like the noises from a TV when it's turned down. But I could still hear it. Then my head hurt really bad, she said, pointing to her forehead. Here, it hurt here. I frowned. She was doing her very best to describe this to me, but it sounded strange, even to me, a non-skeptic of Bigfoot. The wood was piled behind me along the truck wall, so I grabbed a few smaller twigs, then a few larger cuts, and knelt by the fire to get it going again. Cold was pervasive. Left unchecked, we could develop hypothermia without even realizing it until it was too late. This mundane task reminded me of my past life somehow, and though I couldn't remember it, it felt familiar, though, as if I had made fires 100 times. Does your head still hurt? I asked Sid. No, it stopped as soon as the noises did. It was so weird. I'm scared, Bonnie. Glancing up from the fires, I almost burnt my fingers on the embers. I could see she was indeed terrified. I won't let anything happen to you. I can promise you that. We are safe here for now, okay? I promise. We can't stay in here forever. How do we eat? Use the bathroom. I need to pee, she whined loudly. That was a good point about the bathroom. We certainly couldn't go in the truck. My mind raced with a solution to this issue, and I knew it meant we would need to do something neither of us would want. Open the door and brave the outside. Hang on just a second, and we will go out to pee. I half expected her to protest, but she didn't. Only paces across the metal floor as I got the wood situated so it burned hot. Sparks greeted my efforts, and the warm hiss of the flames sent hope through my body. We could do this. It would be okay. It had to be. Survival didn't have to be complicated. It was in the little movements and efforts that you could get through a very hard situation. If you leave the truck, find a weapon. The thought was fleeting but correct, just like the me in the sky said to run, and I did, saving myself. Okay, the fire is back up. Let's look through the bags for anything we can use as a weapon, I instructed Sid. She nodded and gingerly began to look through the bags thrown at the back of the truck's trailer. I had grabbed items from the front of the cab before getting back here. Who knew what could be in them? I knew she had a pee, so we ignored anything that wasn't a weapon. For now, we were focused on sifting through and pushing aside the miscellaneous contents. Food items, bottles of brightly colored drinks, and a few assorted survival items tumbled onto the metal floor. My eyes surveyed what was there, and then I saw one particular thing. A knife. What luck. Knife, Sid exclaimed. This will do, I replied, turning it over in my hand. It was thin but razor sharp, a fixed blade with a leather sheath to house it. Easy to take out and easy to use, or slash at anything. Not quite a gun, but it would do. Just thinking of the Sasquatch getting close enough for me to use it made the hair stand up on the back of my neck. I still could smell the pungent odor emitting from the fur when they chased me last night. It was unlike anything I had ever smelled. Sid, when you heard the noise, did you just get a headache? Nothing else happened? My mind raced with an idea, something I had once watched on a video. I stopped moving. The pain came fast. Stopped moving because of the pain? She frowned at me with a bit of an attitude, reminding me of her age. I was bugging her, the ever-persistent adult figure kids hold a large amount of disdain for. I guess I tried to move towards the trailer wall to hear better, but I couldn't. Then the pain hit my head. Is that knife big enough? I mean, the Sasquatch were hella huge. My mind racing with what Sid just said, I contemplated that I was correct. The beast might have some sort of otherworldly component to them. Bonnie, are you awake? Earth to Bonnie. What? I muttered, looking down at the knife, then back up at my younger companion's face. Yes, I think this is good enough. Let's go out so you can pee, okay? She nodded and wrung her hands, jittery with anxiety and gosh knows what else. This was a pretty big, significant risk, opening up the back door again. But really, we had no choice. I needed to pee too. Taking one last glance at what was scattered by our feet, I swallowed the large lump that formed in my throat. We have no choice. We have to go outside. I'll go first, I said to a very scared Sid. Nodding, we walked to the door and I grabbed the large, thick chain. My fingers were shaking and not just from the cold. This was a terrifying prospect, venturing out back with the beasts. But at least it was daytime, and there was light. I could see the seams of brightness peeking in through the cracks in the door. Not much, but enough to tell it was sunny out. The metal felt as though it weighed 10 pounds instead of only a few. As I unclipped it from the handle and pulled it free, I paused, allowing any noise to come through the metal doors. Inhaling sharply, I waited. Nothing. There were no sounds except a few birds far away in the distance and a slight bit of wind. I took that as a good sign. Birds usually went quiet when something was wrong. After a beat, I exhaled softly with a ragged edge. This was a very high-stress situation, and I knew I needed to be on my A game. Okay, stay behind me until I say to jump down. Got it? I whispered to Sid. Okay, she whispered back. Closing my eyes briefly, I pulled up on the handle, popping the seal on the insulated back door. Knife gripped firmly in the other hand, daylight hit us both in the face, temporarily blinding us. Fear washed over me, and I struggled to keep it at bay. The beast running and the smell. I couldn't stop thinking of what I saw less than 24 hours ago. The door fully open, I took a good look. Snow was everywhere. My tracks from last night were gone, vanishing under the beautiful white puffs piled up in every possible direction. No wonder it was so cold last night. No tracks meant no beasts, no Sasquatch. Gingerly saying a silent prayer, I jumped down into a pile. Sinking almost immediately, I grasped the temperature on my jeans. The need to ensure our safety kicked in. There was no time for reacting. I took a good look to my left and right, then out towards the woods. I saw nothing but white and tall green trees in the distance. Okay, Sid, jump down. Let's hurry. The tiny girl didn't hesitate. She leapt directly in front of me. It's the fluffiest snow I've ever seen, she exclaimed. I need to pee real bad. Come on, follow me. Leading her through what I estimated was about 2.5 feet of snow, we walked off to the right side of the truck. Not a soul was in sight, but instinct said to have some sort of cover while relieving ourselves. You face that way and I'll face this way, I instructed, making a few holes through the snow where the grass was finally visible. Just enough space for us to pee. Oh my gosh, the air is so cold, Sid exclaimed. She wasn't lying. Could have sorely used an outhouse. We finished and trudged back to the rear of the trailer. I wish we had jackets. Coming out in this temperature was indeed dangerous. I gave another glance in all directions before helping Sid back up, handing her my hand for support. Bonnie, where did you get that? Get what? I asked, hoisting myself up after her. On your wrist. Frowning, I looked down to see a purple flower stamped on the inside of my wrist. Before I even got a word out, Sid was scanning her wrist as well. I have the same one. Chapter 3. Not one for tattoos. I had zero clue why a beautiful design was stuck on my skin. It was not the wash-off type either. We both tried with a handful of snow. Maybe it's henna? I frowned. I wouldn't get henna, would I? I can't really remember much about myself, so I don't know. When I tried to think about my life before ending up here, I drew a blank. The premises was terrifying. Did I even have a life before we ended up here? Fear began to take over. Thoughts spiraled, and I rubbed the tattoo on my wrist, feeling the pulse quicken in my veins. Bonnie, have you ever gotten henna before? I haven't, but I bet I would if my parents would let me. Her parents? I snapped out of the frenzy of fear. Do you remember your parents? I asked, glancing at Sid's face. She frowned, scrunching her nose, and thought, Not really, no, but I know I have them. I mean, I do. I have to have them, right? I know you do. I have parents too. I just can't remember them or anything, I replied. We know that already, though. I bet it's some sort of mind control, she laughed. Not wanting to spoil her optimism, I kept the rest of the darker thoughts to myself. It was best that we looked at this from a survival mindset, where you think of things as a literal make or break, and we had to sort through the items that were strewn about. My stomach growled. We also sorely needed to eat. Sitting down on the floor of the truck, I picked up 3 packages of cookies. They were hard as a rock from the cold, and the labels were colorful, purple and yellow, but the writing on them was what I was interested in. Balsen Chocolibnitz. Is that in German? German cookies, Sid cried out, clapping her hands. You have had these before? I think so. I mean, I recognize them. They probably taste good, at least I think. Can we try them? I'm starving. Softly tearing into the paper of the cookie packaging, I took out 2 almost frozen tan cookies with the chocolate filling. They might break our teeth off, but we needed to eat. Sid looked like she might burst from happiness, and I let myself laugh at her enthusiasm. I handed her one of the cookies and popped mine in my mouth. She did the same. We both moaned collectively. Closing my eyes, I let the chocolate melt. It tasted like heaven. The fire crackled next to us, warming my limbs from the trip outside. I didn't even think to check the expiration date on the cookies, but they should be fine regardless. They were frozen solid. Once the outer layer had fully melted, I began to chew and open my eyes. Sid was doing the same, sitting cross-legged on her seat cover. There was still more to sort through. These were only one of many food items from the bags. Can I have another? She asked. Mm-hmm. I handed her a second cookie and put the pack down so I could pick up something else, a bag of beef jerky, but American. I checked the date on this one. It hadn't expired yet. What was the shelf life of beef jerky anyway? I had no idea. Maybe these items were purchased not too long ago, and the driver of the truck that isn't here had actually disappeared not too long before we arrived. That would make the most sense. Probably the Sasquatch found him or her. That thought brought the sensation of fear back, more palpable than before. I could swallow it almost. The me in the sky shouted it to me in the clouds. Help me after you help yourself. Did I have a twin? It didn't make sense. Hey, there's a Gatorade. Sid interrupted my train of thought, and I looked over at the scattered bottles that had rolled to the side of the truck. Orange and red Gatorade, about 10 bottles were beckoning to me. I didn't realize I was even thirsty until I looked at them. I reached for one and cracked it open, then handed it to Sid. Her eyes lit up, and I softly laughed. Her optimism was keeping me from spiraling, that was for sure. Taking one for myself, I opened it and took a swig. The liquid was cold as ice. There really was no worry about food going bad. We were residing in a refrigerator. The fire continued burning as I kept sorting the goods. More German cookies and even a few packs of sweet candies. Still, I found it odd that there was such a weird mixture. Where do you even find such food at? Maybe a higher-end grocery store? I couldn't remember, but I assumed most had international food sections. Okay, Sid said in between drinks. I'm wondering if the driver was part German. Could be. Yeah, like a huge hairy German man whose mom was American. Or maybe it was a huge hairy German woman. Why hairy? I asked, stacking the food along the wall neatly so we could clearly see what we had. Don't know, just out of my imagination, Germans would be tall and hairy. Tall and hairy like Sasquatch. I visualized a large group of creatures. I wondered if the ones I saw were native to this area. I believe they did exist in nature, but not together like that, in some sort of dynamic family. That was like the most unbelievable part about seeing them. Are we going to stay in here forever, Bonnie? The food won't last forever, will it? The cans of SpaghettiOs and Spam were in a row, stacked on top of each other, while the beef jerky, cookies, and candy were neatly arranged next to them, along with the Gatorade bottles. Admiring the stockpile, I turned to look at Sid. Of course not. I want to walk around more and see if there are any other vehicles or a road, maybe ones with cars on it, but for now we should only go outside to use the bathroom. We are too underdressed. Okay, can we put more wood on the fire? I'm still cold. I nodded, giving her permission to grab a few more branches. There were still a lot of questions in my mind I wanted to talk through, but stopped myself for now. A pile of survival items lay remaining, ready to sort. Settling on the metal floor, I picked each one up. Battery packs, cell phone chargers, emergency flashlights, emergency water, filtration straws, a folding first aid kit, and the best items, 2 emergency blankets, folded in nondescript red bundles the size of a CD. Blankets, I blurted out. Blankets where? Sid asked, setting 2 large branches in the middle of the fire. Can we use them? Yes, we can. Let me open them. Counting our blessings that these would be in the bags of food, I tore through the plastic and pulled out the 2 sheets of cover. There were red plastic on one side and foil material on the other. I'd seen them used on survival videos. Crinkling in my hands, I gave her one. She immediately wrapped it around her shoulders tightly and giggled. It's warm! I knew they would be. That is their purpose. I never used one before, so I was hoping their reputation was accurate. Wrapping mine around my shoulders as well, I immediately felt the warmth the silver material radiated. The technology was fairly simple, but it did a miraculous job in an emergency, which was convenient because at the moment, I couldn't describe this impossible scenario that Sid and I were thrust into in any way besides an emergency. Bonnie, I was thinking, what if the Sasquatch only comes out at night? Are they nocturnal, like bears in winter that hibernate? They might only be able to be out with no sun. We both sat on our seat covers across from each other, blankets tucked around our shoulders tightly. The fire crackled with a good intensity now. I imagined that anyone else in our situation would be doing just as we are, hiding with the fire, having eaten some of the leftover goods, and probably talking through what the Sasquatch even were. I think they were hiding during the day, yes. When we went out, we saw 0 tracks, which means they hadn't been out the last few hours of the storm. I tried to conjure any relevant information I had obtained over the years. I don't remember too much about them from past videos I saw online, except they are solitary creatures. The ones here aren't, Sid said objectively. No, the ones here are definitely not. Well, maybe they just happen to have families that then banded together. Or maybe they are being hunted and met up. Hunted. Maybe they were being hunted. If we can, we need to go back out and pee again before it gets dark, I said. I don't know what time it actually is. God knows we can't last all night in here, not after drinking all that Gatorade. Let's go now, Sid said. Okay. Getting up again, I dropped the blanket. Cold immediately enveloped me. It worked so well that the air now felt extra frigid. Sid followed suit and joined me at the back door. Repeating the process from earlier, I removed the chain and slowly opened the metal door. Cold slammed into our faces yet again. The outside was much darker as clouds had rolled in, but there were still 0 footprints in the snow. Looking around, I scanned the landscape, doing a quick perimeter check. The air blew with the coldest ferocity I had ever felt since being here. Looks safe. Let's hurry, I simply said before jumping down. Sid followed, and we made our way to the side of the trunk again and repeated the process from earlier. My teeth chattered as I did, feeling as though I would never be warm again. The air had begun to swirl, and I saw clouds drop, almost forming a fog. It had to be late afternoon, which meant night would come very soon. Hastily, we finished and moved back towards the truck doors. I climbed in first. Do you see that? Sid asked with fear in her voice. What? That, she said, as I turned from the inside of the truck to give her my hand to pull up. I gasped. Chapter 4. Have you ever had a moment in life where you can't breathe, where time stands still and the air that you already have in your body is stuck, unable to circulate through your system? A cold breeze hit my face as I looked in horror at the wood line. The tallest person I had ever seen was standing just at the edge of the trees. Had to be at least 8 feet tall. My lungs shut off. Burning from the cold, I moved my shaking hand further, keeping my gaze locked on the person. Grab my hand, I said blankly to Sid. She doesn't move, her head fixed towards the woods. Sid, my hand, I screamed. Blankly, she did as I commanded. I hoisted her up in one swift movement. The giant person didn't move, and neither did I. Go inside, I said. Sid must have understood the dangers, so she complied. Standing in full view, I brought both arms up to rest on either side of the door. A sense of protection replaced fear in my mind. There was no way I would let this freakishly tall individual come into this trailer with us, or harm Sid. No way. Finally, my breath could escape, and I exhaled in the loudest manner possible. Narrowing my eyes, I took in the stranger. Clouds began to swirl violently, and wind whipped my long hair, sending the strands to dance in the air. The person appeared to be a man, wearing a 2-piece black suit of sorts. It stepped out of the clearing and began to walk forward. Anger flared up, and I flipped off the man in a brazen move, then shut the door and quickly strung the clip chain, latching the 2 doors closed. I hadn't realized how hard I was breathing until I moved by the fire. I sounded like an overweight person who had just climbed 2 flights of stairs. Bonnie, are we okay? Sid asked in a soft tone, fear evident but not overt. She was trying to be brave. We will be. I won't let anything happen to you, I reassured. As before, when dealing with the fire, I grabbed a few more branches and began layering them, my mind on what was now coming towards us. Embers flickered. Red and orange colors danced along the walls and ceiling. It was beautiful. Funny contrast to the situation. He was so tall, she whispered. Yes, it was all I could really reply with. I wanted to say more, but we heard sounds outside. Sounds of loud footsteps and heavy breathing, not unlike what I just sounded like, but louder. Bonnie, Sid pleaded softly. I matched her gaze and put a finger to my lips. We had to be dead silent. The man had indeed reached us. It had to be him. No one of normal height would sound like that when walking around. And the breathing, it came from incredibly huge lungs. Why had I flipped him off? Had I made him mad? It was just a quick action I hadn't even meant. Just so much confusion. What is even going on? Sid's eyes widened and her lips trembled, but she didn't react. The fire was oblivious to the danger that had descended upon us, and continued boiling the moisture from the various diameters of sticks. For some reason I found it odd, the contrast between the man's loud breathing just outside the thin metal and the nearby fire's soft crackling. The footsteps stopped directly behind where I was sitting. I turned as though either the man or I could even see through the metal separating us. Breathing intensified, filling the trailer with its eerie tones as it echoed between the interior walls. Sid's mouth let out a soft moan, and I whipped my face to her. She shook her head and clasped her mouth tightly with both hands. I sternly put a finger back on my own lips and shook my head in reply. She nodded as a response, and then I turned back towards the wall. Then the breathing stopped. In its place, a sharp scraping sound began to run along the side of the trailer, almost as if a giant fingernail on a chalkboard. I immediately envisioned such a thing in my mind. It gave me goosebumps, big ones, to pop up all along my neck and arms. Fear was slowly beginning to creep in, among the resolve to protect Sid and myself. Whatever was out there appeared to want us, and seemed to be taunting. A slow assault on our senses, and it knew it, just like it must have been when watching us, both from the woodline. It probably saw us come out and even pee. But it didn't approach until I saw me put both arms up on the sides of the doorway. I had a come and find out stance. Something inside me knew that was stupid to do, but I did it anyway. And now we were paying the price for my cockiness. Sid was absolutely petrified. Scraping continued along the back of the trailer by where the doors were, then further along towards Sid. I stood very slowly. Her face shook and her eyes bulged. At any moment she might not be able to contain herself, and may do the last thing I wanted, to scream. He obviously knew where we were, and yet I felt it necessary to stay silent, as if I didn't want to reveal our hiding place. I didn't want to give the tall man a clue about where she was. I had to ensure she kept quiet. Slipping my shoes off, I tiptoed in virtual silence towards her. The breathing intensified as it neared her, just like it had for me. Reaching her just in time, she grabbed my legs and pulled me down to sit with her. I did so quietly as possible, and she buried her face in my chest, fingers gripping tightly into my t-shirt. The breathing got louder and louder, then stopped. What is it doing? The man-spoke question hung in the air, heady with anticipation. There was no doubt in my mind that whoever was out there definitely intended us harm. Normal people didn't behave that way, especially not to two women alone, on their own. Men like that were predators, and this person was not normal by any stretch. Nothing about this was normal. The urge to scream started to crawl up my throat as I tried to suppress it. Had Sid felt the same way? I suddenly found myself fighting for control of my own senses. Squeezing Sid's body tightly to mine, I closed my eyes and listened to loud crunching footsteps. He was on the move again, and thankfully they sounded as though they were going away from the truck. I listened as the urge to yell faded, just as the footsteps had done. Then I could hear them no more. A sense of protection came back over me and settled as though pulling on the emergency blanket over my senses. Sid stopped shaking and I let her go. She sighed and gave herself a hug before releasing her arms to adjust the chair cover. My legs were cold, so I stood and went back to my side of the fire. It crackled in the darkness, providing the only light we had. We sat facing each other, both afraid to speak after what just happened and wanting to claim our nervous systems. There was no doubt in my own mind that this was still very weird, very wrong, and very much not what is supposed to happen in reality. At least the reality I thought I knew in my head. I couldn't remember my past still, but this had to be wrong. My body felt it was. They say the body keeps score. Outside, the wind must be whipping, because I heard a low howl, not from any person, but from the wind. Then the trailer rocked for a few seconds. Maybe there was a snowstorm descending. Another one? We were stuck in a winter area. Part of me was grateful for the snow, as it definitely impeded the Sasquatch. But I also dreaded more of it because it made staying warm nearly impossible. I glanced at the crack around the back door, which was chained shut, and saw no light. Night had officially come. Bonnie, we will need more firewood. Sid was right. The firewood might last through the night and morning, but not much past that. I know, tomorrow when it's light we can get more, as long as the Bigfoot and the tall man aren't outside. She finished my dismal thought. I nodded, watching her face. Giving half a smile, I realized she needed reassuring. You'll be okay, Sid. For now, let's have a can of spaghetti. Can you grab one and open the lid? You need to eat. That made her perk up some. She found a can and even a plastic spoon among the miscellaneous supplies. I wasn't hungry, though, and chose to rearrange the fire instead. There was no axe or large sharp object besides a smaller knife. We would have to find branches and anything broken. It should all work out. I tried to think positively. Only the thoughts were laced with a bit of fear. It began to creep into my psyche. With each poke at the fire, a little more crept in, bit by bit, subtle but building, until my palms began to sweat. What was happening? Bonnie, do you hear that? I glanced up from the fire. Howls could be heard far off in the distance. Chapter 5. The night was definitely full of terrors. It was still dark out, according to the seal by the back door. We had endured for hours the amount of howling that would drive anyone to madness. The noises had stopped a while back, but now the silence was almost as bad. I still planned to go outside and search for firewood, even with this going on. My hope was that daylight would force them to stay in the shadows, deep in the woods, or whatever it was they lived. A long shot, but the only option we had. Otherwise, we were doomed to freeze to death when the firewood ran out. I sat with my forehead resting on my knees, exhausted beyond belief. The fire was still going strong, but not roaring as it had hours earlier. Only about 20 pieces of wood were left, a mix of branches and a few larger chunks. It might last a day, but definitely not another night. Fear had worn me out physically and mentally. I had no idea how I was holding it together. Sid. She was the reason, if I were honest. There were no greater motivator for pushing me through hard times than having someone younger and more vulnerable to take care of. They depend on you, and you know they need you. Why fate had brought me such a young one to take care of, I'll never know. But here we were. In lieu of having a bed to sleep on, I had given Sid my emergency blanket. I laid it down on top of the seat covers so she could feel warmth from below as well as above. It helped keep her calm when I realized the beasts outside were not going to quit howling. An hour in, and she was about to break down. The makeshift bed helped a lot. I didn't know who I was before this, but a caretaker seemed to be a natural role I was fitting into. Maybe I had kids of my own? Who knew? The thought made me sad, so I shoved it aside. Instead, I chose to focus on survival. We had enough food to ration safely for a week, with me eating 1 meal a day, and Sid too. She, of course, will get more calories, and that was how it should be. I was strong and had muscles from working out. I could afford to burn through that if need be. The firewood, though, would be tricky to get without going to the woods. I wanted to find scattered branches as we did at the beginning when running towards the truck. However, at this point, it would be buried under several inches of snow. Will we freeze to death from exposure before even getting them dug out? Hypothermia was nothing to play with. It happened faster than people realized. We have to do it. There is no other alternative. Mindset on what needed to happen. I thought about the possibility of the man seeing us or even being outside again. If the Sasquatch were hiding in the woods during the day, the man might not be. He was so tall, so incredibly tall. Defending ourselves against him had to be thought out. It had to be a weakness, too, just like the beasts. But what could that be? If the sun bothered the Sasquatch, maybe the snow or rain would deter the tall man. Maybe? Sid whimpered in her sleep as I looked through the tendrils of the fire separating us. Only her face was visible from beneath the emergency blanket. She looked so tiny and so young. For a kid, she was fantastic at how well she was handling this. I probably would have cried and stayed in the truck except to Pete. Speaking of which, my shaking leg was letting me know that as soon as the day broke, I was going to have to go again. For now, I rested and contemplated the plan for getting firewood. Another hour or two passed before I finally saw daybreak come through the sill at the back door. Soft light began to filter through until it glowed. Not wanting to waste time, I got up and stretched my bone-tired limbs. Legs, shoulders, and torso hurt like a heavy branch had been laid on top of them for too long. It takes a lot out of you to sit on cold, hard metal for most of the night. The fire could use more wood, but I hesitated to add any in the emergency scenario that no more could be found under the fresh layer of snow. Slowly, I ambled to the back door. The slivers of light became brighter as I got closer. I noticed the wind had died down as I finally reached the long clasp chain. Standing still, I listened, allowing myself to be calm and to not jump to open the door as I wanted to. I closed my eyes as well. No rustling, no loud sounds, no howls, and no heavy breathing. Only soft chirps from far-off birds and slight wind gusts. We were finally in a peaceful state. The creatures had retreated and were gone, hopefully. My body wasn't tense either. No headache or anxiety. Was any of it fear, or had the creatures induced it? What a funny question to pop up in my mind. Very weird. I wondered if the creatures had power over us, but most likely it was fear in general. There are different faces to fear. Inner me was right. Many things can make us fearful and prompt such responses. Out here, we had several things to be scared of, but getting wood was not one of them right now. Right now, we needed to be brave. Bonnie? Sid's voice caused me to turn around. Yes, I replied. Is it daytime finally? Yes, it is. I smiled at her little face as she smiled back at me. Finally, we could put the long, terrible night behind us. Can we go pee, then get the firewood? Yes, I replied, turning back to the trailer door. There was only one way to find out if the tall man was gone, and the Sasquatch were as well, and I was ready. You might want this. Sid appeared behind me with the knife stretched out in her hand. I grinned and took it from her. Tucking it into my front pocket so it stuck out, I grabbed the chain and unclipped it. It was heavier than usual, or I was weaker. Uncoiling it took some effort this time. Finally, I dropped it to the metal floor with a loud thud. Listening again, I made no move yet to open the door. Sid understood what I was doing and remained quiet as well. My body didn't flinch or react in fear. All felt okay. Gathering my wits, I opened the metal door slowly. Outside air came in fast, as it usually did. Nothing really prepares you for the shock, though. I shivered thoroughly, and Sid touched the back of my arm. If the man comes back, I can distract him. Then you shank him in the gut. Say what? I snickered. Shank? Yeah, stab, like they do to prisoners they don't like in jail. Sid, I said, shocked. Had this girl been raised in the hood? I thought, smiling, as I pictured the petite girl spending time in the slammer, tattooing gang symbols on her back between yards calls. I mean it, Bonnie. It might be the only way to kill him. Things always die when they get stabbed in the gut. My imagination still running wild, visualizing tally marks on her forearm, which I could only assume were gut kills. Her suggestion wasn't half bad. It actually made sense. Okay, killer, deal. But let's not think of him. He isn't here right now. We got out, pee, then hurry, and you follow me together would, okay? The last thing we need is to get hypothermia. Got it, she replied. Now or never. I climbed down into the snow below, directly onto a set of huge footprints. I reached back to help Sid down. No one was there, but evidence of last night was. It was everywhere. Sid followed me around the side, and we both noticed the giant prints, a mix of large shoes and weird bare footprints from the Sasquatch. They had all indeed come close to the truck. Even clumps of hair could be found. I told Sid to round the back and follow me towards the cab. The air was cold, but the wind was almost non-existent. The clouds formed a high barrier that almost made the temperature bearable. But still, we had to hurry. No jackets or gloves, and this weather was crazy. The large footprints kept going in patterns all along the truck and extending out like a tall man had been pacing and pacing. I trained my eyes on the wood line to the right as well as on the ground near us. I saw nothing so far. We would need to keep walking. Bonnie, look! Chapter 6. A green cloth bag stuck out from the snow. Sid had spotted it well before I would have. Where had it come from? Thoughts flashed in my mind, none of them making sense. It was not buried deep enough for it to have been out here long. Oh my God! A set of very distinct footprints ran from the bag down to the road. Not disturbed in any way. These were fresh. Can I grab it? Sid asked excitedly. It was as if we were part of some elaborate game and someone was watching us. Yes, but be careful. Zooming in on the footprints, I wanted to know where they went. It was too odd. Were there people out here too? If so, we desperately needed to find them. I walked a few paces and followed next to the prints. The shoe size was around what a normal man would wear, and there were ridges on the soles, like a work boot type of thing. Bonnie, clothes! Turning quickly towards my young companion, I saw she had indeed found clothing. She began pulling out a few dark items. Leave them in the bag. We can look later. We need to find wood. She nodded and stuffed them back in. I turned to the tracks, wondering how far they went. Follow me, I said. These lead to something. Or someone, Sid quipped. Clucking my tongue, we walked until the tracks were about 500 yards away and nearing the forest. I knew this wasn't the best idea, but something was spurring me on, almost like being mind-controlled. Snow crunched under our shoes, not the fluffy type from freshly fallen snow, but the kind that had been sitting for days and had formed a harder crust on the surface. It was less wet than yesterday, and my jeans weren't getting soaked yet. We walked a while. Then I spotted some. Wood. There, Bonnie, Sid said. Branches and branches, as well as hunks, were scattered about right at the edge of the trees. We had to be careful, though. The beast and the man, they could be near. Hang on, we need to listen. Look. Sid did as I asked and stood completely still. Gazing into the forest, I saw nothing but tall evergreens with massive trunks and smaller trees mixed in. It's dark, too dark to see much besides the branches and the dark brown hue of the forest floor. A few birds randomly chirped, letting me know that they weren't scared, and there wasn't any immediate danger. This eased my nerves quite a bit, and gave me the extra courage I needed. Grab as many as you can carry and let's get this hauled over before anything shows up, I instructed. Sid nods and begins to pile the smaller branches in her arms. I looked at the normal-sized footprints that brought us here and wondered if the person who made them also left us this wood. Why, though? The me in the sky came back to my mind. Help me after you help yourself. A very unsettling feeling descended over me. I couldn't shake it off, so I focused on the bigger cuts of wood. They smelled very strongly, an aromatic, almost perfumed smell of the forest. As I piled 3 in my arms, I realized how heavy they were and began to trek back quickly to the trailer. Sid was already far ahead of me. The bark from the wood bit into my arms. I wanted to cry out from pain as I neared the trailer, but I stifled it. There was no use. The chore had to be done, or we could freeze to death. How easy it was to find the wood, huh, Bonnie? Sid exclaimed as she dumped her pile right as I approached. I mean, that was kismet, or someone out here saw us. Oh, I got it. Maybe the man who abandoned the truck is helping us, but having to hide from the Sasquatches and the tall man. Her thought process was keen and probably had some element of truth to it. Maybe. Let's hurry, though. I don't want to tempt fate. Sid ran ahead, her shoes crunching with each leap and bound. I walked as fast as I could without running. The possibility of the driver helping us might be plausible. I mean, we found a bag of clothing that we desperately needed. Then the footprints led up to the wood we needed as well. What if there was a man in the woods helping, watching? I wasn't going to complain about help of any sort, but I also didn't want to stay here either. We had to get away from this area to safety. Can we eat beans for dinner? It sounds good for around a big fire, like from a movie or something. If we were cowboys on the range. I laughed unexpectedly at the idea Sid proposed. What? She giggled. We have enough wood now. We have more than enough. Yes, we can. The idea of being cowboys did make me grin. To be a child and have such a vivid imagination. When did we as adults lose that ability? Then I remembered my runaway prison fantasy. Gang signs and tally marks. Well, maybe we didn't lose it all. We made 2 more trips to the woods and back, dumping it all at the back of the trailer right under the doors we climbed down from. I stood with my back against the side of the trailer as the sun came out from behind the low cloud cover. Another smile hit my face. It felt glorious. I even closed my eyes to take it in for a second, which was much needed for my psyche. A few beats into my recharge session, though, a scream rang out. Sid, I yelled, eyes flying open. I couldn't see her. Frantically, I searched around the back, then rounded the side. She yelled my name, which made me run faster. Sliding on the snow, I grabbed at the edge of the grimy truck hood until I finally reached her. She stood, her hands shaking, holding a folded newspaper of sorts. What happened? I demanded, huffing aggressively. I heard the door of the cab slam shut. It scared me. I looked up at the side of the trailer and didn't see anyone, so I came up, opened the door, and found this sitting on the driver's seat. Why would you open the cab door? You heard it shut. I was at the back. You shouldn't have come up here alone, and if you were scared, why did you come up here? I don't know. I'm sorry, Bonnie. It really scared me. I didn't want to, but it's almost like I had to. Someone was here with us. We weren't alone in the daytime. Stay here. Don't move, I told her, setting aside my confusion. Eyes more alert than they had ever been so far, I moved with a purpose, scanning the interior of the cab. Then I left the door open and rounded the other side to find large footprints. Large footprints. Fear gripped every fiber in my body. We had to get back inside the trailer with the firewood. Let's go. I grabbed Sid's arm and pulled her with me, my eyes still scanning the woods behind us, in front of us. I had never felt my heartbeat race so fast, not even when the Sasquatch first chased me. The sun retreated behind the clouds and the wind stirred, even if I knew that a new face of fear had found us. Get in and stay back from the door. I'm going to throw the wood in, I ordered. Helping hoist Sid in, she scurried into the darkness of the trailer. I didn't stop, just a quick glance behind me and at the sides before I began to toss in the wood. It was hard and I thought I would pass out, but I had a frenzy of fear and anxiety forcing me to continue. I didn't know where the tall man was, but he had been within feet of Sid. Grunting, I finally threw in the big chunks of wood. One cut my finger and I yelped but kept tossing. I started to feel sick to my stomach and my head began to hurt. Last one, I said loudly, climbing in and slamming the back door. I latched it and coiled the chain up, making sure we were secure in the trailer. Just in time, too, as I heard large, heavy footsteps almost immediately. The tall man. He was there. He had probably been only a few steps from me, though I didn't see him, and I had glanced around frantically while throwing the wood. We were in a nightmare. Holding my breath, the fire crackled in the dark, sending oranges and reds to dance on the back door. I didn't dare move my feet. Instead, I reached down to touch the knife secured in my front pocket. The weapon was a last resort, but I would use it if I had to. A gut stab. Fear began to take a hold as the footsteps stopped right near me. Ha 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 ha. The man let out an eerie laugh, deep. The fear in my chest felt as though it would choke me, and I felt a few tears slide down my face. Nothing mattered at the moment. I couldn't move. My eyes didn't even blink. Just fear. Cold, dark fear. Then the man walked away from the trailer, his footsteps carried off in the distance. Gradually, the tightening in my body released. I could blink, then swallow. I exhaled loudly and moved to Sid. She was hugging her knees to her chest and rocking back and forth. "Bonnie, why is he doing this?" she quietly asked. "I don't know, Sid, I don't know." I rubbed the small of her back softly as I knelt down beside her. Only one thought echoed in my mind. Help me after you help yourself. Chapter 7. What does it say? I had never asked her why she found it so concerning. I didn't have a chance. I looked at Sid across from the fire, a mouthful of baked beans being chewed happily. Swallowing, I wiped my mouth on my sleeve. She held up the newspaper so I could see the article title on the front. Fear in Trucking. The title was very fitting for the situation we found ourselves in. In fact, I saw it as a sign from someone. The footprints we followed most definitely were watching us, and had to have left the clothes in the article. They might also be running for the beast and the tall man. Something else was hindering them, or most likely, judging from the boot print size and the male clothes left in the bag, and that was why he hadn't tried to actually get out from the trailer to safety. Safety. What was safety like? I tried to rack my brain as Sid read the article softly. I could barely hear her, but I was too tired to say anything. I would just read it to myself when she was done. I wanted so desperately to remember my past, anything about it, but nothing was coming up. It was blank. My head began to hurt, so I shifted focus back to reality here. I glanced up at the ceiling of the truck trailer. There were vent holes cut on the top where the fire smoke was escaping. The truck was used to transport goods that needed ventilation, whatever that was. It allowed us to make a fire here. Was that also a coincidence? If you wanted to, you could connect the dots to back up a theory. I knew that much. I had learned it somehow. Most likely in studying human behavior. I possessed the ability to think critically. Who I was might be a mystery, but I did have knowledge that I gained somehow. So did Sid. We fit together well, if I did say so myself. By design. I heard my own voice say to my mind, just like the sky me had said a few days ago. Bonnie, this is an article about the fear that truckers face in their jobs. One guy talked about picking up hitchhikers and how one night the person he picked up morphed into someone else. It said, what? Standing up with nervous energy, she bounded over to me and handed me the article. See, read the last story. They interviewed a bunch of truckers and they told stories of what scared them while driving, she said. Can I eat a few cookies now? I won't eat too many. Holding the paper in my hands, finally I stared at the date at the top in a trance. Yeah, sure, it's fine. I'll read it, I replied absentmindedly. She bounded back to her side of the fire as I studied the newspaper. It was more of a trucker society newspaper than anything else, with a name to boot. It was faded and had to be old. The date being in summer was obviously not the season we were currently in. That made me think, was it even from here? I had no idea where we even were. I assumed mountains of somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, judging by the trees, but how could I be sure? The truck had no license plates. I checked yesterday when carrying the wood. That was definitely odd, unless the truck was used for nefarious reasons. I skimmed the article, passing by stories of traffic accidents, things that made the trucking life hard, and even stories of having heart attacks while driving, all of which made me appreciate the fear every situation could bring. Then I finally found the last story. A man who wanted to remain unnamed began telling the story of how he had once been driving through a dense forest, the location also unnamed. A pit formed in my stomach as I read. It sounded like he was describing our location. The tiny hairs on my arms began to stand up. The man spoke so vividly, as though I was sitting in the cab with him. Some people could tell stories like this. Transporting you to the scene and making you feel what the characters are is a gift. I swallowed the lump that had traveled up my throat. I was feeling exactly what he was describing in the story. Fear. The scene escalated as the trucker described how, after rounding a sharp corner, he stopped when he saw a man waving him down. Even though he felt a pull to do so, it scared him. Not wanting to, but feeling like he had to. Deja vu hit me when I read the words. For some reason it felt familiar. The fire crackled and I could hear Sid munching on a cookie. Time seemed to stand still as I read on. Then he let the man into his cab, and the man climbed in, and he seemed to expand, not in girth but length. The tall man. I got chills at the way he described him. The face, the look of his smile, it was describing the tall man. Suddenly I dropped the newspaper as my hands began to shake. Darkness was on us, and I knew it. I could feel it. Feel something outside of the truck. Are you okay, Bonnie? Did you read this story? I turned to her. She stared at me with worry etched on her face in between the flames. I don't know what to say because fear had taken hold of me, but I know I need to say something. Bonnie? I'm still reading it, I squeaked out. I think it's about the tall man. Whoever was outside left this for us. That's what I think. I can only nod and pick the paper back up. She was right. And I needed to know how the story ended. Fighting the urge to curl into a ball, I finished reading. The trucker was wild with fear as a man morphed before his eyes. He said he never spoke, just pointed. He drove along the road with his creepy passenger for over an hour before the man signaled he wanted to get out at a clearing above a drop-off in a valley below which was visible. A break between the thick evergreen forest. He is describing here, where we are. My palms sweat and my hands still shook as I finished reading. I felt ill and my head began to hurt. The trucker stopped in the road and the tall man got out. He smiled a creepy smile and laughed so loudly the driver could hear him through the shut door and the truck's idling engine. Then he vanished out of sight, over the edge. That was it. The trucker ended the article with a warning, not picking anyone up, ever. And that was it. I checked the paper for anything else, but that was the rest of the story. There had to be more. Who was the man? Who was the trucker? Where were they? Maybe we just needed to know that the tall man isn't a good guy, Sid asks. I closed my eyes before talking. Breathing deeply, I struggled to get the fear to abate. It was back with a vengeance, like when the tall man was actually outside the truck. But this time I wanted to control it, to take back myself and stop feeling it. I tell myself I am brave and I am capable of getting through this survival situation. No fear would prevent me from doing what I had to. I repeated it over and over. You are brave, Bonnie. You are capable, and you are not going to let fear stop you. You are brave, Bonnie. You are capable, and you are not going to let fear stop you. Slowly, after a few beats, I began to control the fear. It began to abate. He is definitely not a good guy, I replied with wavering in my voice. No, and I was thinking, what if he was sent to scare us, to keep us from the Sasquatch? Sid's words snapped the fear right out of me. What did you say? Opening my eyes, I put the article down and focused on her. Well, I mean, the Bigfoot family or clan or whatever they are, what if they were being protected? It was a novel idea. You mean they could have people protecting them? Yeah, why not? Could be researchers for all we know. As we chatted about it, I heard far-off footsteps. Not close enough for Sid to even hear, but I could. I pictured the tall man retreating. He brought fear with him, after all, from our previous dealings with him. Maybe he heard me talking and thought his job was done for the night. I was plenty scared enough. It does make sense, Sid. We need to try and walk away from this area, though. I looked towards the trailer's doors. Tomorrow. We can't stay here any longer. I have to get us to safety. I know. I found warm track pants and sweatshirts to wear and warm socks in the clothes bag. Perfect. We will go in the morning then. It was about time we did more than sit here. Chapter 8. Sleep came swift and rough. I found myself in the cab of a truck, like the one in my mind, while reading the story in the newspaper. It smelled like musty socks and bitter coffee after it had cooled off. The cab was too dark to see anything, not even the person driving. I could only see the soft orange glow of the truck's instruments lit on the dash in front of me, and I was sweaty, not from heat, but from fear. Rain was pounding the windshield outside and the window next to my face. I couldn't move. I tried. I surmised I was in a dream, or nightmare rather, but there wasn't anything I could control. This is called sleep paralysis. Somehow I knew that. Instead of fighting it, I decided to do nothing and not fight anything. The driver coughed a few times, giving me the impression he was a man. I hoped it wasn't the tall one, but it didn't seem to be. The road was barely visible in the dark through the smeared remnants left by the active windshield wipers. We were on a tree-lined, two-lane road deep in the woods. I turned my head towards my window and watched as we sped by dark, thick trees. They appeared to be evergreen, just like here in real life. The lull of the rain began to make me feel sleepy, even though the fear had a grip on me. Hypnotic and peaceful, my breathing steadied. I struggled to keep my eyes open. Falling asleep in a dream while being paralyzed is a weird feeling. Bump! Just as I was about to drift off, the truck ran something over. The driver made zero sounds except the click of his hand on the gear shifter. He slowed the truck rapidly, then came to a full stop. I was wide awake again. Eyes wild with fear, I felt suddenly sick to my stomach. Bile began to travel up my throat, and my pulse rapidly accelerated. There was something outside. I scanned out the front and saw something that made my blood run cold. Bigfoot. Lumbering into the road and illuminated by the truck's headlights was a tall Sasquatch. He stood in the middle of the road, staring at us with piercing bright blue eyes. Then I heard a loud growl outside my window. Unable to move, I could feel my eyes bugging out almost out of their sockets. I had never felt so scared in my life. Whack! A loud smack hit the window, causing my body to jump slightly in the seat involuntarily. I saw a hairy and an unusually large hand pressed against it. Then it slid down and off into the darkness. The driver revved the truck engine, much to my horror, as I now saw two Bigfoot in the darkness illuminated by the front lights. They looked angry too and ready to attack us. Then a third one appeared, holding its arm. It was smaller, but not by much. Was it one that we ran over? Was that the large bump I felt? Before the thoughts flew out of my mind, the beast howled. The sounds made my blood run cold, and I felt as though I needed to crawl under something and hide, but couldn't. The fear was overtaking every single sense in my body, and I began to feel utterly unbearable when the beast disappeared from the road. Bonnie! My eyes opened suddenly. I was staring up at the ceiling of the truck. The images of the Sasquatch still burned in my mind. I blinked. Bonnie, I think it's early morning. My stomach hurts. Slowly, I turned my head and looked for my small companion. She was sitting up, the emergency blanket wrapped around her shoulders, her eyes half open from sleep. Hurts? Like a hungry hurt? Yeah, I think so. Grunting, I sat up and grabbed the blanket from around my waist. It crinkled under my fingers. These things had literally saved us while in the dafty truck. So had the fire, but it could only do so much. Pulling it around my shoulders so I matched Sid, I stood. Let's open a package of crackers. And I want you to drink half a Gatorade, okay? You are most likely very dehydrated. I watched as she grabbed a small package of crackers. The air in the truck felt warmer than usual, which was odd, but most likely due to the amount of wood I piled onto the fire before nodding off last night. I wanted us to be semi-comfortable for once. Thinking of breakfast made me wish we were somewhere else, like a cafe. A huge stack of pancakes, thick and fluffy, with a pat of butter on top and copious amounts of syrup, sounded so good right about then. In fact, my stomach rumbled at the thoughts. We just had to get out of here. Today we would leave the truck and follow the footprints until they left the road. I kept thinking about what if. What if we just walked down the road a ways? It would have to lead us out of the woods and back towards more cars. Eventually, anyways. But staying here with no rescue in sight was not cutting it. It just wasn't. I stretched my legs. They hurt from lack of proper nutrition. No doubt lactic acid buildup. I wanted to get some of the male clothing items on so I could warm up more and get the dirty jeans off. We hadn't had a shower in days or even the ability to wash our hands. It was a very unpleasant feeling. The clothing bag was by Sid, so I ambled over to pick out my set to wear for the day. We had sorted it briefly last night. I don't think the pants will fit me, she said, but I can take the one pair of sweatpants, the ones with banded bottoms at the ankles, she continued, before veering to her more pressing thoughts. Bonnie, what were you dreaming about? You were thrashing about pretty badly. I grabbed the bag and fished through it. The man who dropped this for us did his best to leave things we could fit in, and the pants had strings to adjust them. Yes, take these pairs, 2 of the sweatpants. Then look, here's a smaller sweatshirt and lightweight jacket. He must have been watching us. The man who left these was watching us? I nodded and pulled out what I needed. It only makes sense. What were you dreaming about? She asked again. I must have worried her, thrashing around like I was. I needed to make it right and ease her mind. I sat down next to her and she handed me a cracker. Food was the last thing on my mind, but very much needed. Chewing, I took a few beats to gather how I wanted to describe it to her. Too much, and she might get more scared. I was in a semi-truck like the one we are in now, and I think the dream came to me because of the article we read. It was the last thing on my mind before falling asleep. And our current situation, she interjected. Yes, that too. It was dark in the truck and I couldn't see the driver. We were speeding along a wooded road, with trees like from here. Then all of a sudden we hit something. I couldn't see what it was until a few Sasquatch came in from the side and got in front of the truck. Then I woke up. I needed to keep it clean and skip the talk about my being paralyzed. Just remembering that made me anxious and start to sweat a bit. That is one of the worst feelings anyone can have, if you ask me. It's akin to being trapped in a horror movie that you know has a very terrible ending. That's scary. We know the tall man is real, and the Bigfoot are real. It's just the trucker we haven't seen yet. Maybe we will today? I mean, his footprints were outside, and we saw them. He has got to be real. I bet your mind wanted to process it, you know. Sid, for such a young woman, you are super smart. I know, she laughed, handing me a few more crackers. You're most likely correct. My mind wanted to process what we saw. That is some crazy stuff if you really think about it. It's not normal. No, none of it is, Bonnie. But we can explore more now. I kinda need to pee. I did too. Same. After we changed into these new clothes and socks, he left us these warm wooler ones too. I held up a pair, showing her the thick material. It was too bad we didn't get any boots left, or waterproof anything shoes-wise. But this was enough to be outside now and not freeze to death, which was all that mattered. I finished swallowing the crackers and got up to change clothes on my side of the fire. It felt weird to get undressed in the trailer in the cold air, but we did as fast as we could. "Ready," she exclaimed. Both of us dressed, I glanced at the back door. Daylight was, in fact, beginning to seep through, or most likely the early light of the morning. It was bright by any means. Too bad we also didn't get a watch or a way to tell time. I was having difficulties remembering how many days we had been here already, and it had been at least a few. "Okay, I have the knife in my pocket. Stay by me and we'll walk to where we had been before, okay?" "Yep." We made our way to the back door and I undid the chain, dropping it to the ground. The noise echoed in the trailer. Swallowing a lump that traveled up my throat, I pulled on the latch, opening the door. Exhaling as the door swung open, my breath caught. A Jeep. Chapter 9. Time stood still as I looked at the Grand Cherokee sitting about 20 feet away from the back of the trailer. My heart raced and pounded in my chest with fear and anticipation of who had parked it there. It could have been anyone, the tall man, the man who left us clothes and boot prints to follow, or it could be from other people. Bonnie, a car. Realizing I still needed to keep us safe, I scanned the area slowly with my eyes before we even thought about jumping down into the snow. There could very well be a person hiding on the side of the truck, waiting to ambush us. But I thankfully saw only one set of boot prints, and they looked identical to the ones from yesterday outside that led us to the items we needed to survive. So the man was back, and he was helping us once again. But why? Why not just show himself to us? Left with more questions than anything else, I decided we needed to hop down. He, whoever he was, hadn't heard us yet. "Let's go, but stay right behind me." Sid made no sounds as she followed along. Once on the ground, I scanned more, turning in all directions. The woodline was empty as usual, though anyone or anything could have been watching us from there. The boot prints started from the Jeep's door and led away, along the right side of the trailer, the side facing the woods up above. I didn't care to follow them yet. More pressing matters at hand. Our bladders. Never again would I take having a bathroom for granted. Leading us around the front of the truck, we deviated from the prints and rounded the other side. It was cloudy and cold, but not as cold as it could be. The new clothes were helping so much. Part of me wanted to see the man, or have him approach, if nothing more than to say thank you. He literally saved our lives with the food left and the firewood we found scattered. Other than the Grand Cherokee and the boot prints, there wasn't anything else left. No other clues to life having been here. Let's follow the prints one more time, see if he dropped or left anything else, then head back to the trailer. If the Jeep has keys in it, we can leave. Help me after you help yourself. For some weird reason, the phrase came to mind again. The me in the sky had said. I was given the warning for a reason. I know I didn't hallucinate the Bigfoot. Sid saw them too. This, whatever we woke up in, was indeed real, but we needed to get out of it and back to civilization and safety. So we went. It had not snowed last night, or the prints would be buried. Thankfully, the weather had left them exposed. Surprisingly, I could barely feel the cold with the new clothes on. They were much warmer than the jeans and the thin t-shirt I had woken up here with. Even with wool socks were keeping me warm. It was super nice. The woods loomed to the right as we walked, making me nervous. No doubt what I feared was lurking, if not watching from there. Sid was behind me and unusually quiet. I kept turning to see if she was okay. Her face looked contemplative as she glanced around. Opening the door to see the Jeep was a startling thing. I was hopeful that we could drive it and get out of here, but I just wanted to see if anything else was out here or anyone else. The tracks were next to us as well, also to the right. It was for sure driven in at night. Just as we got to the area where the scattered wood was, a loud noise could be heard from the woods, a screeching sound, far off, but very loud. "Bonnie!" Sid cried out from behind me and ran up to grab my hand. "Shh," I ordered. We stood in the open with big sweeping gray clouds above us hanging like a thick worn curtain and listened. "Screech!" It echoed out again, loudly. Sid squeezed my hand so hard I thought it would have a bruise. Then there was another loud sound, the sound of Bigfoot calling each other in the distance, echoing and guttural. Something in me snapped when I heard it. I turned to Sid. "We need to run. Run!" Still holding my hand, I took off back towards the trailer, and so did Sid. We picked up speed rapidly through the snow, our shoes making swift sounds as we ran. Fear coursed through my veins and made my heart pump so fast I thought I would pass out or fall over. By some miracle, I managed to stay focused on the trailer in front of us. We had to hurry. As we neared the truck, I loudly gave my companion directions. "Get in the trailer, grab the food, put in the bags and the clothes, and get it to the Jeep. I'm going to grab some wood. We are getting out of here." With zero clue whether the Jeep had a key or not, I knew we had to leave. The urge to flee was too strong to fight. It was an ungodly urge that came over me, as if someone squeezed in my face and gave me instant virus. I would get us out of here. The trailer was right in front of us, only a few steps away. The cries from the beast rang out again, making the hair on my arms stand up. Hurry, Sid. I hoisted her up into the trailer and ran to the Grand Cherokee. Ripping the driver's side door open, I saw a set of keys loosely set in the ignition. Bingo! I could drive us out of here. I left the door open and ran, slipping on the snow in my overzealousness, and hoisted myself up into the trailer. Sid had bags in her hands and sweat on her face, running down her forehead. Good job. Get them in the Jeep. There are keys. She grunted and began her task while I grabbed wood and threw it out as far as I could towards the back of the Jeep. We were doing this. The creatures in the woods be damned. Once I felt satisfied we had enough to start another hasty fire if need be, I jumped down and took bags from Sid. She had got everything, even the emergency blankets. We huffed and puffed to the back of the Cherokee, and I opened the lift gate to get everything stacked inside on top of the wood. It barely fit. I wouldn't be able to see out the back, but it didn't matter. Okay, good. Get in, I shouted, and the sounds from the woods now coming to an unbearable decibel. There were so many of them, so many noises. All I could do was think of them running after me the other night, the first night here, and the ones in my dream illuminated by the headlights of the semi-truck. We were trapped in a literal nightmare, but I was getting us away with the help of the man in the woods. Or, very well, could be the driver, the abandoned truck we had been camped out in. Who knew? Turning the Jeep over with the key, it rumbled to life. Wasting no time, I put it in drive and hit the gas. We spun slightly, but as I was able to keep us on the tracks already visible in the snow. I planned to follow them out, hopefully, to an actual road. Too focused on the snow in front of me, I failed to see what Sid did. Bonnie, a man, look. She pointed wildly through the windshield towards the woods. A man? There stood a man, wearing a plaid jacket and black pants with a bright blue beanie on his head. He had medium olive skin and a close-cropped beard. He was watching us. I made eye contact as I kept my vision on the tracks in the snow. Who was he? My heart thundered in my chest even harder than it had a few moments prior. How I wasn't having a literal heart attack, I had no idea. Then he put up his hand slightly and waved before turning quickly and walking into the woods. He's gone, Bonnie. It's him. Got to be. He gave us the Jeep. Gripping the steering wheel with both hands pretty violently, I couldn't say a word. My mind was jumbled. He went back into the woods with the creatures. How was this possible? How could he do that and not get hurt or attacked or chased as they did to me? The tracks turned sharply, so I did too, sending us sliding. I managed to keep the Jeep under control. We were following a smaller road, turning into the woods just like in the dream. Bonnie, to the right, a Bigfoot. Chapter 10. A large male. He was running full speed through the trees, parallel to us. Don't stop, Sid screeched. Her voice was full of fear, and my body also doused with it. I had no choice but to keep a steady grip on the steering wheel and keep us on the road. We were now going about 40 miles an hour, which was too fast for the snow-covered road, but I was keeping straight. The tracks in the road were still visible. Then there was a bend up ahead, and I had to slow down. I didn't dare glance to the right in case I lost control of the Jeep. Is it still there, Sid? Talk to me. I could hear myself shouting, but I had slipped into an out-of-body mode, as if my mind couldn't handle what was happening, and most likely it couldn't. Yes, he is. Keep going, Bonnie. He's getting closer. 100% alight with fear. I took the corner hard, sending the back end fishtailing, but we made it around the curve to be met with something extraordinary. The snow's gone, I shouted. Suddenly the road opened up, and there was no more snow, just blacktop and yellow lines. I punched the gas hard. We rocketed forward along the road, sending the snow-covered trees a blur outside both windows. My nerves were screaming with fear and the will to get us to safety, if any safety could be found. I couldn't see how far up the road went, beyond what was there. The forest was too dense. Is it following us, Sid? No, it's gone. I can't see it anymore. I think you lost it. Exhaling loudly, I loosened my grip on the wheel slightly. We might have to outrun it. She could be right. I glanced down at the speedometer. We were going 65 now. Freeway speeds. I wondered if Bigfoot could run that fast. Most likely not. He wasn't a cheetah. The road was free of snow but still wet, as though the trees had completely stopped the flakes from reaching this far down to the ground, and that was probably why it was dry. Maybe my mind wasn't being tricked after all. Okay, so we keep driving. I can slow down a bit. Keep it safe, I said out loud. I hope we find people. Safe people, Sid clicked. I slowed to 45 and gave a good look in both mirrors, then looked out the windows while still keeping an eye on the road. I saw nothing but thick, lush green trees and snow on them. Nothing else in the forest. We had been driving for a good 5 minutes, away from the Bigfoot. We should be good, but we had to keep pushing. I hope so too, Sid. Finally, my voice sounded semi-calm, and I could feel the adrenaline begin to dump throughout my system. I didn't feel the racing fear I had when we first heard the noises in the woods and when escaping. The frenzy had quietly packed up and exited. Bonnie, I don't feel as afraid now. Is that weird? Weird, I asked. Yeah, is it weird? I mean, I was so scared I thought I would die just a few minutes ago. The road curved again, and I slowed even more so we could turn without flipping the Jeep. I know what you mean. I feel the same. She finished my sentence. Bigfoot have some sort of telepathic way of making us feel this way, she quipped. As we got around the bend, I held my breath. There was a significant drop in elevation, then a clearing, and another road. Another road! My breath caught in my throat. We may have just stumbled on a good way out of here. I just had to get to it. Speeding wasn't the smartest, but I couldn't help it. The Jeep was reliable enough to keep us going, and even if it was old and a bit shaky, I didn't care. Help me after you help yourself. I could still see the image of me in the sky giving the warning. I was following it, whether I realized it or not. The man in the woods made sure of it. Who the hell was he anyway? I think you could be right, Sid. I felt fear when the tall man was near too. The Bigfoot seemed to have the same effect. They have some sort of power over us. Just different faces of fear, she muttered. We descended the hill and met the connecting road. I thought quickly and picked a direction to follow. Right. Left was going back towards the area we just escaped from. It was best not to go that way. I got us on the new road, which seemed to have been paved a lot more recently than the wooded road, and off we went. Trees were further back, and the tall grass was even cut down to the sides. Despite the snow, you could tell it was used, and there were crews maintaining things. Had I just ensured we would be with society again? I sincerely hoped so. Once we find a store or place to pull off, we will, okay? And daylight will end before we know it, and we aren't spending the night in this Jeep if I can help it. I hope we find a hotel, Sid quipped. I want a shower and a soft bed. Me too, that sounds heavenly, actually. Wait, but how do we pay for anything? We don't have money, do you? Fair point. I hadn't even thought about it. It was as if we had always been living in the back of a truck trailer and peeing outside. I had no recollection of who I was before I got here. None. No, but I can barter or simply ask for help. It will be okay, Sid, don't worry. Glancing at her face, I saw worry etched into it. For a kid, this must be extra frightening. I had to show her that I was calm and was taking care of the situation. In front of us, the landscape became wooded again, though not as close to the road. We were heading back into another stretch of forest. At this time, the snow had blanketed almost all the way to the forest floor. The trees weren't as thick as before. I braced myself to feel fear and for my heart to race, but it never happened. I felt absolutely normal. The beasts aren't here. That was the only explanation. We had a reprieve. I fully intended to take advantage of it while it lasted. Oh, and we can't tell anyone about the Bigfoot and the tall man, Sid. I cleared my throat. Thinking practically, we had to be smart. I had no desire to get locked up or taken in for speaking of delusional things that ordinary people would not understand. Okay, I wasn't going to say anything, but Bonnie, we are filthy, we smell, we look like homeless vagabonds. How do we act when we see people? Easy. We act like we were camping, we got lost, just found our way out of the wilderness, and now we need a shower and a night's rest. That is absolutely believable. You are my daughter, okay? We just pretend we are family. She nods in agreement. It makes sense and should be believable enough not to get the police involved, though I had yet to spot one car. Not one car was out on the road with us. I wondered how far, really, we were from any towns. It must be miles and miles. The sky was turning dark as clouds thickened. Then a few flakes hit the windshield. Snow. Boy, it's definitely a very snowy place here. I bet we are near mountains. Maybe the Rockies or something like Washington State? Not the Rockies, because no pine trees, but I think Washington or Oregon is more right. Plus, Bigfoot is huge in those states. Oh yeah, for sure, with the endless trees. I wonder, though, where the tall man came from. A place of nightmares, I quipped without thinking. Whoever the tall man even was, he was not normal. Almost like a relic from the times of David and Goliath. He could be of that bloodline. Bonnie, look to the left. Up ahead there was a mailbox. A red, shiny metal set and a big cedar constructed post with shingles on top for a roof, and to the side of it was a blacktop driveway with small twinkling accent lights mounted on metal posts. Someone fancy or rich had a place way out here. You said first place you'd stop. Let's check it out. Okay. I waited to feel anything fearful or scary, but I just felt the normal anxiety for our situation. Once we got close, I slowed down to make the turn onto the driveway. The tires of the Grand Cherokee rolled smoothly onto the blacktop, and for once, I felt like riding in a car, not a clunky Jeep. I swallowed a lump in my throat as I worried about who could be at the house. Hopefully a nice couple willing to help us out and not ask too many questions. We couldn't see a house yet, not with how quickly the trees thickened. The homeowners hadn't cleared them back like they were from the main road. But then, oh my gosh. Chapter 11. The largest house I had ever seen that was made of logs appeared in the distance. A clearing opened up to a massive yard, then to the house. The lump in my throat became a tennis ball. I couldn't swallow it down, and my hands began to sweat with anxiety. I needed to breathe and focus on staying calm. Slowing down the Jeep, I began to drive at a snail's pace as we neared the covered portico that was over the front door. It looked like a mini lodge hotel. "Someone rich must live here," Sid whispered, her voice full of trepidation. "Indeed," I echoed. The front door was a bright shade of red, the kind from a home magazine. Plus there were large Christmas trees flanking each side, covered in white twinkling lights and red glass ornaments. "Bonnie, it's near Christmas?" A pit in my stomach formed. We didn't even know what month it was. The realization was hard to swallow. It was one thing not to remember your past at all, but another to think we could be in a different month or even year. "It appears to be so. We need to be very careful, Sid. Just stick close by me, okay? Let me do the talking to whoever lives here." "I trust you, Bonnie." Her words gave me a temporary boost of confidence, one that I sorely needed. Coming to a stop a few feet away from the front door, I put it in park and scanned what I could see. As I did, large flakes began to fall softly from the sky as the light began to darken. The snow had reached this area. It was eerie, though, and my pulse thundered in my ears. I had a weird feeling, but nothing to point to why. "Okay, let's get out. I'll knock on the door." Tucking my knife in my pocket, I got out, and so did Sid. We shut the Jeep doors and cautiously walked towards the red door. It smelled of freshly cut evergreen as I knocked loudly on the door. I inhaled the scent and detected cinnamon as well. This was what a luxury Christmas experience should smell like. I wondered how close we were to the holiday. Birds called loudly off in the distance as we waited. Then the wind blew, ruffling my long, dirty hair. The sensation of goosebumps began to spread up my arms. Not fear, but extreme anxiety. "I think I hear footsteps," Sid said. Straining to hear, I listened, but I heard nothing. "Can I help you?" The woman's soft voice rang out. It startled me, and I yelped, jumping at the sound. There was no one here. So who was talking to us as though they were outside? The hair on the back of my neck prickled. A sensation of dread began to blanket me, just like with the tall man. "I'm in the doorbell camera. Don't be alarmed. I am not home, and no one is renting the house right now. Are you both lost? You look like you've been camping." The doorbell. Feeling stupid for not knowing there was a camera on the doorbell, I turned my attention to the voice as I felt Sid slip a hand to mine. She was slightly shaking. I wondered if she felt the same sensation as I was. "Yes, we are of sorts. We were camping and got lost for days, trying to find a place to stay for the evening." "Well, goodness, you are welcome to stay here. I own the house and use it as a vacation rental. I'm June." "Bonnie," I said, pointing to myself, and then to Sid, "and this is Sid. The code is 5589. If you type it into the lock keypad, you can get inside and stay for a few days. Will that work?" This was too good to be true. I had no idea who the old woman was or why she would help strangers like she was, but we needed shelter. "Yes, we are so grateful, June. Thank you. Once we get back home, I can send you money." "Oh dear, don't worry about it. I'm wealthy and old as dirt. No kids of my own, and thankful no man to drive me bonkers. Just me, a few houses, and my pets. The fridge always has basics in it, and toiletries in the bathroom. My number is on the main kitchen fridge, and a house phone on the counter if you need me." It had to be too good to be true. It was worth fleeing in a Jeep given to us by a man standing in the woods. This was the nicest house I had ever been to, and possibly even seen. "Thank you," I replied. After hearing a click on the doorbell, I squeezed his hand and punched the code in. The front door made a mechanical grind as the deadlock retracted. Once silent, I cautiously turned the knob. The feeling of dread had vanished. It was odd, and there was no time to think about it. Later I would. "Try to stay near me as we walk around the house, okay? Then I'll go out and get our stuff." "If we need it," Sid whispered. "Yes, if," I said, opening the door. "If we need it." The floors were polished wood and a beautiful amber shade. The layout was open, and a giant striped rug greeted our feet as we walked in. A large rustic chandelier hung from the vaulted ceiling with crossbeams. The kitchen came into view to the left, as did the largest picture windows I had ever seen to the right, along with a huge living room and fireplace. "Wow. Yes, wow," I reiterated to Sid. Letting go of my hand, she began to slowly explore, and I went straight to the kitchen fridge. June had indeed put a large laminated sheet of paper with her info and picture on it. She was a tiny, gray-haired woman who looked to be almost 80. I touched the paper, then opened the fridge to see what food there was. My stomach growled with encouragement and the thought of real food. "Oh, wow," I gasped as I looked at the most expensive assortment of pressed juices and dips for chips and veggies, along with a fully stocked veggie drawer. There wasn't much that was unhealthy, though, so I opened the freezer side.
Meat galore lined the shelves, as well as a few vegan pizzas. This was food for rich folks, all right, but food nonetheless, and we were lacking in nutrients. I grabbed a bottle of green juice and a package of spinach dip, then shut the fridge. There had to be a pantry somewhere. Wandering the kitchen, I found a large walk-in one. It was also stocked with everything canned and boxed that was healthy, as well as some healthy corn and assorted chips. I grabbed a few bags of those. Then I took a few fancy cut glasses off a large floating shelf and poured Sid and I a generous serving of juice. No time to waste. We needed to fuel up. "Sid," I called out, "come and eat a bit." "Coming," she called out. She joined me on the large island, and we sat together in relative silence. I still had anxiety about this situation in this house, but I was trying to not let it take over. It seemed safe so far. We just needed to explore it fully. Though Bigfoot were long off, over an hour away, they wouldn't make it out this far, surely. As if reading my mind, Sid chimed in between bites. "Do you feel kind of weird being in here?" she asked. "Weird?" "Yeah, I felt dread coming to the door. It's a bit better, but I still feel it. I don't want to be scared, though, Bonnie. I'm trying to be brave. You got us to safety, after all." Her optimism shining through once again, I smiled and briefly rubbed her shoulder in reassurance. "I did, and couldn't have done it without you. We should be perfectly safe. Let's finish so we can check the rest of the house before dark and make sure all the doors are locked and everything." We ate fast and both drank the juice, even though it tasted like eating straight grass from the front lawn with a bit of dirt mixed in. Once satisfied, we got up and began to walk the long halls towards the bedrooms and a large indoor movie theater. June must be very rich. I bet this place is worth millions. Sid wasn't wrong. It had to be. June must have married a very rich man or had a very illustrious career to afford such a place, to just rent it out and not live here. As we approached the movie theater, I felt my heart quicken. It was gradual but very noticeable. There was a decorative sign on the double doors that told us what was in the room. The closer we got, the more worried I felt. "I don't know if we should go in," I said. Sid looked worried as she stood next to me. "What's wrong, Bonnie? Was I the only one feeling this way? I must be." "I don't think we should go in the movie theater. You're scaring me," she said softly. I opened my mouth to speak, but the feeling of dread was too much. It was about to choke me, the grip on my throat and chest. Crash! Then we heard a loud sound from the theater, a bumping as if something fell or something jumped off of something. Sid screamed. Chapter 12. "Bonnie!" I had grabbed Sid and ducked, pulling us against the wall in the hallway next to the theater doors. A sort of instinct had taken over. My arms were shielding her as I crouched, fixated on the doors. Whoever was there would surely have heard Sid scream and want to come out. "Shh!" I seethed, desperately wanting her to be quiet. This wasn't a joke. We had to hide. Dread didn't even begin to describe the feeling that had come over me. It was the encounter with the tall man times a dozen. I felt her body tremble as I shielded her, scanning the hallway to either side. Time seemed to stand permanently still. Whoever was in the theater was moving around. More thumps and louder footsteps echoed inside. Was the tall man here? How did he get in? For a desperate moment, I wondered if June had any guns here, anything for protection. Hell, even a fire poker would be better than a measly pocket knife. But it was something, and beggars can't be choosers. The noises kept on until suddenly they stopped. My heart racing wildly, I kept my arms around Sid. He's going to come out. Not wanting to be a sitting duck, I fought the dread and urge to crawl on the floor, and decided to go to the doors and confront whoever was there. "I'm going to the doors. Stay here. Don't move," I whispered to Sid. Her tiny hands gripped my arm with a silent pleading, but I pulled away and stood up quickly, patting her back as I moved past her without a glance. My eyes were fixed on the theater doors. I pulled out the small knife and shakily prepared to defend us. Even if I ended up dead, I had to try. There was no way I couldn't. I heard footsteps, heavy and loud. Nothing else would make that sort of noise but the tall man, or a Bigfoot. The thought that they had possibly followed us caused my heart to almost separate from my chest wall. Then I heard nothing. No sounds, nothing. Only the loud whooshing in my ears of my own heart and Sid's soft pleadings in the background, barely audible. But the footsteps stopped. I stood still like a statue, knife out and ready. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. My heart thundered in my ears and muffled anything else I might have heard. I wanted to turn the volume down, but there was no way to do so. I was stuck in panic mode. Seconds ticked by, and when I thought I should just go in and investigate, to stop the tension and get to it before it came out and got me, the doors burst open. Bang! The force was so great that the wood slammed against the walls on either side. "Oh my God," I shouted on instinct. I had the knife up and poised to stab as soon as I saw the tall man. Only he didn't come out, but a raccoon did. A raccoon? How? I questioned
how it had made so much noise. No, that's not possible. Its eyes wide with fear, it scurried past me to the left and took off down the hallway. I felt as though I was having a heart attack and could barely move. Bonnie, we need to let it out. Sid ran past me as I cried out for her to stop. I still needed to check the theater for anyone else. I was so sure the tall man was the one I had heard, from the dread to the footsteps. It had to be him. How could it not? Making a quick decision, I moved towards the open doors and ran in. All I saw were red velvet movie theater-style chairs and plush carpeting with tiny lights that came on as I moved down the aisles. Motion sensing. June spared no expense on this house. The fear I felt was now gone, replaced with intense regular anxiety and worry. I made it to the end of the room where the large movie screen hung and stopped to take a good long look at the room as a whole. I was the only one in here. There weren't even any boxes or items that could have fallen. Nothing that would make noise if someone were just in here. Nothing explained what I just heard. It was perplexing. I let it out, Sid shouted from far away. Taking a last good, slow glance, I ran out of the room and towards the rest of the main house. I got to the living room just in time to see her shut and lock a side patio glass door. The raccoon was running away into the woodline. It was no doubt scared out of its tiny mind. I know I would be. It was just a raccoon, Bonnie, not a person, right? She asked, glancing back at me. I nodded. Yes, I think so. I looked and didn't see anyone in the theater, so it must have just been the raccoon. Can we find bathrooms? I want to take a bath. Her suggestion made a lot of sense, but first we needed to secure the house. Yes, I want to shower too. Let's secure the doors, lock everything first. The sun is going down soon. And close any blinds or curtains if there are any. Nodding, she got to work locking the doors, and I found a remote for the blinds in the great room. Massive panels deployed from the top near the ceiling and blacked out our view, as well as anyone trying to see in. It was truly private now. We covered the entire bottom floor and then moved upstairs. There weren't but a few balcony patio doors to secure and then regular curtains to shut. We made quick work of it. Then we were done. Can we sleep in the same room? I don't feel safe being alone, Sid asked, looking down at her feet. Of course, let's take the one with the 2 beds. It looked cozy and even had a gas fireplace. Did you see that? Now it was my turn to give Sid reassurance and try to lighten the mood if I could. She was clearly still rattled by everything. That room is pretty. I like the bear theme. Okay, good. There is a master bath attached. You can take a bath in there, and I'll go to the one across the hallway, okay? She nodded and we separated. Bonnie, did you look in the closets? There are sets of sweats in them, and robes. Her voice immediately called out as I walked into another large, spa-like bathroom. I jogged back to where she was to find her holding a set of gray sweatpants and a pair of fuzzy slippers. June had some basics in each closet, it turned out. What a very boutique hotel vibe. Perfect, wear those. I'll wear a pair too, then we can be clean and comfortable. Taking a pair for myself, I returned to the bathroom and shut the large door. I exhaled deeply and closed my eyes. Stress poured out of me in a rapid-fire manner. I had been holding on to it and didn't even realize. All the anxiety from escaping, the adrenaline, the man who gave us supplies, then the Bigfoot who chased us. Everything came flooding back. It was too much for one day and too much for one person. I ignored the fact that I was crying, knowing it was just part of calming down. Opening my eyes, I wiped my cheeks while looking into the reflection in the mirror. My exterior was a reasonably accurate representation of how I felt. Having a clean, quiet night felt absolutely needed. Help me after you help yourself. I quickly shed my clothes and stepped into the huge walk-in shower, turning on the hot water. It didn't take but a minute for it to get to the perfect temperature, so I could step under the waterfall shower heads. Now this was life. You would think I had never taken a shower before with how grateful I felt. Being grateful for simple pleasures is such a wonderful feeling. It can lift one's entire mood and day in an instant. I wondered if the man who left us the Jeep knew we would come here. That thought was oddly comforting. Maybe he had also been here? In June's house, a slight unsettled feeling came over me as I washed out my hair with the toiletries June had left for guests. The scent of vanilla bean couldn't take away the inkling of worry that I felt. The fatigue and probably malnourishment had made my reaction time and thought processing extra slow. I wasn't putting the pieces together very fast, or in some ways, at all. We might very well be in danger and not know it. June was far too convenient. This house was too convenient, and the man who left us items, that's a literal vehicle as a way out, was way too convenient. The lack of cars on the road? In fact, as the water washed my tired muscles, I felt very stupid. Had I led us right into a trap? The feeling of dread that I had felt earlier was real. It was as real as it was in the back of the trailer as the tall man circled around, laughing and huffing. Then the Bigfoot clan that chased me from the woods was real too. These things that most people thought were definitely figments of our imagination were real.
Sid and I were stuck here with him in the deep woods of the Pacific Northwest. That was where we had to be. I finished showering as my thoughts ran rampant through the tiredness of my mind. I only wanted a quiet night with Sid, safe in the opposite bed, a fire going, and both of us able to sleep under an actual blanket without being woken by anything terrifying. That wasn't too much to ask, was it?
Chapter 13. The bedroom glowed from the gas fireplace by the far wall. I couldn't sleep, instead choosing to lie with my eyes half open, arms tucked under the soft comforter. It felt safe here, and safety was what we didn't have for days on end. Sighing softly, I turned to look at Sid, burrowed in her blanket and snoring unabashedly. She went right to sleep, poor thing, as soon as her head hit the pillow. But me, my mind wandered. The tall man and the man who gifted us the items we needed to survive. The Bigfoot group or family, if that is what they were to each other. How did we end up here? We had to be in the U.S., but we weren't near any people until June came over the doorbell camera. What were the odds of this? How many different faces of fear could we encounter? Such questions should never be a worry for ordinary people, but here we were. I sensed that I was a survivalist of some sort, as I had selective memories of watching shows online and had some general knowledge of how to make fire, think critically, and stay alive. Was I a wilderness guide in my real life? I had no idea. I could very well be, or maybe I own an outdoors store, or I could simply be an amateur who likes survival and the supernatural. The funny thing about this entire situation was the fact that seeing the multiple Bigfoots didn't really bother me. I already believed that they existed, but naturally I had zero desire to be hurt by one. The fire crackled as I watched orange and reds dance on the ceiling in the dark. It was just like in the truck trailer, in the freezing cold, lying next to the campfire we had to build. But now we were safe and clean, and more importantly, warm indoors. The contrast was not lost on me. Help me after you help yourself. Help her? Help the me in the sky? Who was the me in the sky? I still had no idea why I saw that up in the stars. I was definitely leaning towards it being a hallucination. That's the only part of this weird experience that I couldn't reconcile with any sort of reality. My mind must have been racing so badly that I imagined that part, especially since the sky was like a Monet painting. That couldn't have been real either. I sighed again and let my eyes close. The doors are locked, the lights are on, and the blinds are all down. We are safe. Reminding myself that we were okay, I yawned and stopped fighting sleep. Then I was out. I don't know how long I slept for, but it wasn't the entire night. Something loud and in the house woke me up. That was my first thought, too. Something is in the house. I jumped out of the bed I was sleeping in and grabbed Sid, pulling her up and fully awake. Sid, there's someone in here. I hear noises. We have to get up, I whispered loudly, hissing. What? Bonnie? Come on. I grabbed her sweatshirt from the floor and threw it to her, then slipped into the warm tennis shoes I had appeared here with. Sid did the same as I pulled out the pocket knife. This wasn't going to be enough, though, and I knew it. I needed to find something better for a weapon. Frantically scanning the room, my eyes landed on a fireplace poker set by the gas fireplace along the wall. It was just there for looks, as this needed zero poking or sweeping. Hurrying to it, I picked up a very sharp black iron poker. It was slightly heavy, but not too much. I could wield it at a person for sure. We were going to get downstairs and outside to the Jeep if need be, okay? I don't have a real way to stop anyone, so we might have to run again. I know, said Lament's defeat in her eyes. This wasn't fun for me either. I wanted so desperately to get back into the warm bed and close my eyes. But here we were, facing something or someone again. There was a slim chance it could be another animal that somehow wandered in, like the raccoon from yesterday in the theater, but not likely. Crash! Thump thump. Whatever or whoever was in the house for sure, and they were very loud downstairs. I closed my eyes briefly to remember the layout. We came up one big staircase, but I saw another at the end of the hallway. It would most likely take us down to a different area instead of the main one by the kitchen and living room. That was our best bet. My eyes opened again and I looked at Sid. She was very worried, and I'm sure my face echoed the same sentiment. I gave her a weak, forced grin and then nodded. We would get out of here and we would stay alive. I didn't care what I had to do. Let's go. Sid followed. I led us to the door and slowly opened it to the empty hallway. Sounds of cabinets banging resounded downstairs. It wasn't an animal. They couldn't open cabinets like that. Anxiety hit like a tidal wave. The tall man or someone else was here. Help yourself. Screw the me in the sky. I had to help myself and Sid, just us two. Motioning to Sid to be quiet and follow, I ran out the door and along the wall, towards the smaller and more hidden staircase. The air felt cool, as though a window was open, or a lot of windows. When we went to bed, everything was warm and locked up. It didn't make any sense. We reached the staircase, and I heard more rummaging from below. Slowing my pace, I took the stairs down with Sid directly behind me. My palms began to sweat as I gripped the poker tightly. The knife was now safely back in my pocket. The only option was to get outside, to the Jeep, and away from here, if we could. We reached the bottom of the staircase as my heart again thundered. Dread began to fill me as I touched the doorknob leading into the side hallway opposite the main stairs. More thumping could be heard from the kitchen, then water being turned on, then off. It was now or never. Swallowing the lump in my throat, I pushed the door open softly, then we filed out into the hallway. Motioning for Sid to stand still, we listened. More footsteps, but this time heading away. I surmised up against the stairs and via the main staircase. They were loud, as though a giant were walking. That has to be the tall man. I turned to Sid and mouthed, "Stay with me." Then I ran. I ran towards the front door and flung it open. It was unlocked. Unlocked. The tall man had unlocked the door, or perhaps multiple doors. Shit, this was not good. The Jeep was still there, and we climbed in. Fumbling with the key I had left in the cup holder, I got into the ignition in time to lock the doors. To my right, the tall man burst out the door, ducking as he did so because of his height. And boy was he tall. He slammed a fist on the hood of the Jeep as I threw it into drive and punched the gas. "Oh my God," Sid screamed from the back seat. I didn't want to risk looking behind me, so I yelled at Sid. "Is he following us?" Yes, he is, but he's running slow. Keep going, Bonnie." Sid screamed so loud I thought my ears would bleed. "Why are you screaming?" I yelled. "I see a Bigfoot. He's gaining on us." The words I didn't want to hear. The tall man and the Bigfoot group must have tracked us to the house. But why? Why were they following us? What did they want with us? "Where is he? Where are they?" I shouted as I connected back to the main road off the driveway. "I don't see them anymore." "What do you mean? They aren't following us." She had to wait. I still couldn't check the mirrors. We had to keep heading away, and the road was starting to get some snow on it as we drove in the opposite direction from where we had been coming into the place. This section of road was unknown. The trees were thicker than before, almost as if being swallowed by a dark fairy tale. I floored it again to give us some distance. If they had tracked us, they would most likely continue to do so, and we would have to be on the run. "At least we have food in here still," Sid lamented. Food, clothing, wood for a fire. Yes, it was all I could mutter. And now, no shelter. Chapter 14. I drove until night arrived and we were enveloped in darkness. Snow was practically pouring out of the sky. The windshield wipers had been swiping on high for a few hours straight. I was starting to get snow hypnotized. Watching the white specks fly at you in the headlights was more distracting, and it was beginning to become dangerous. We needed to stop, but where? "I'm tired," Sid said softly, "but I don't want to fall asleep when you're driving." "It's probably a good idea you don't, so you can help me keep awake. I'm starting to have problems seeing through the windshield with the snow. It looks unreal. Bonnie, look, a road, there." Squinting through the windshield, I see a road to the right, a gravel road. I slow way down until I'm stopped on the main roadway. Heavy flakes hit the windshield, fully transformed from the blurry white masses I was just struggling with. "There is a road. It's our best bet," I surmised. "I trust you, Bonnie." Deciding that fate had given us another chance to stay hidden from the tall man and the Bigfoot clan, I swallowed my apprehension and turned the wheel down the gravel road partially covered in snow. The tires immediately crunched and we began to be tossed around. I have to drive much slower," I muttered. We barely fit on this road, and that made me nervous. Trees surrounded each side, as if the branches were long arms, reaching out to scrape and touch the Jeep. No other tire tracks were visible in front of us. Only one vehicle could fit down here at a time anyway. Hopefully the thick snow coming down would cover where we left the roadway, so if the tall man was still chasing, he wouldn't know where we turned. I hoped, at least. "It feels like we are entering Narnia." Sid still had that childlike imagination, and it was much needed still. "It does in a way, doesn't it, driving through the wardrobe?" I hoped with all I had in me that we would find a good spot to camp. We might have to stay the night in the Jeep, though, which would be freezing. If so, it would be a long night, too. But what could I do? Holding my breath, I kept driving, inching us closer to what lay beyond in the trees. My mind went through our inventory. We had what we needed to survive, but we wouldn't have shelter if we slept outside by a campfire. Inside the Jeep, there would be no fire at all. It was a catch-22. Of either choice, I was leaning towards being in the Jeep. Snow falling meant we would be wet, and we still had the emergency blankets, which would keep us alive at least. The gravel took a turn toward the left, and I followed. I saw a small clearing, what appeared to be a lake. A pretty big one, but completely hidden in the trees. From the main road, you would never be able to see anything or even think such a massive body of water existed. "A lake!" Sid exclaimed. "It's pretty. Do you see the small cabin, Bonnie?" "I do. Hopefully we can stay there." Apprehension bubbled up in my mind. Anxiety also crept in. I parked right next to the cabin and turned off the engine. We had half a tank of gas left, and I didn't know where more fuel could even be so far out in the woods. It was best to conserve it. "Don't get out yet," I ordered. Silence filled the car as we sat so that I could observe. The air was thick with falling snow, and it fluttered all around us as though we were in a shaken snow globe. It was beautiful. This was a very wintry location. I had no idea how long we could stay safely here, but it should be good enough for the night. I don't see anything, Bonnie, do you? Scanning all around inch by inch, I waited for the feeling to appear, the one that alerted me to the tall man. Or at least that was my theory. Both creatures, the tall man and the Bigfoot clan, gave me dread and a feeling that can't be described when we were in their proximity. But now I felt nothing, only the stillness of the wintry scene. No, I see nothing. Still, I waited another minute before feeling it was safe. Okay, we can get out and bring the items inside. I'll grab the wood again, okay? You get the bags? Sid nodded. We functioned well as a mismatched team, both in age and skill, but Sid was better at staying calm, and she had an enthusiasm that was oh so helpful. I wouldn't trade being stuck here with her for anyone else. I hadn't been thinking much about my former life lately, but the thoughts began to creep in as I grabbed hunks of wood to cart into the cabin. Do I have anyone who is missing me right now? It's possible I didn't, but Sid most certainly did. She had to have parents, and maybe even siblings. The duty I felt towards keeping her safe only heightened at the thoughts. I would do my very best to keep us from the creatures, the different faces of fear chasing us. Once the wood was all carted in the bags too, I shut the small cabin door and exhaled as I latched the large door lock. One more night in a strange place. At least it was a roof over our heads. Bonnie, this place is nice. Not fancy like the last house, but it's cozy. Do you think anyone lives here? Upon inspection, which I hadn't yet done, I saw that she was right. It looked homey, nice and furnished modestly. Nothing was fancy, but it was fairly clean. I frowned at the thought of other people possibly showing up. Hopefully this was a vacation home. I don't know, maybe a vacation place? Yeah, could be. I don't think they rent it like June did. There are no signs and instructions, she said, opening the small fridge. Oh, and there's no food. Not a rental like June's. It had one big room with a loft up above the A-frame rafters. It was rudimentary, not a living space for more than a few people, and there were 0 personal items. No photos, no knickknacks, most likely a summer-type home. We should be okay and alone for the night, I reassured Sid. Let me get a fire going, then we can maybe shower. A hot shower would feel incredibly good, especially after the one at June's. It was heavenly. I made quick work of the wood stove that was sitting in the corner of the cabin. 2 smaller logs fit in perfectly, and I was able to shut the metal door to the stove without burning myself. These things would heat up the area fast. I knew that from watching programs on TV of cabins. Parts of my memory were flashing things to me, just not who I was beyond my name. Bonnie, the shower is warm. It works. I tried it real quick. Laughing softly, I got up from the squat position by the stove and took one quicker glance around the cabin. The curtains were already pulled and the windows didn't even open, each being a single pane of glass. This wasn't fancy at all, but it was just what we needed. Perfect. Grab a change of clothes and go for it. Is there soap? No, but the water will feel good. Yes, it will. While I waited for her to finish showering, I laid out some food from the truck trailer that was loaded into a bag. We could eat some canned spaghetti again. A camping meal fit for 2 weary women. At least it would give us energy. What will we do if the creatures find us? The road to where we are is only so big. Anxiety crept in with the thoughts. Softly at first, it felt okay. As Sid showered, it began to take over my mind. I had to actively work against what was bombarding my brain. I could hear the water splashing against the tile, and I closed my eyes as I sat on a lone wooden bar stool waiting. Stay calm. It will be okay. You have made it this far. We had made it this far, and I was determined to keep it that way. As I softly exhaled and then inhaled for a few beats, I thought I heard a separate sound, one outside. My eyes flew open. I heard it again. Then again. People are talking. The unmistakable sounds of talking were now outside the cabin. Not the tall man, not the Bigfoot. People. Sid began to softly sing a song in the shower as I got off the bar stool. Panic rose in my voice. There are people outside. Chapter 15. If you ever get the chance to tell your loved ones you miss or love them, take it. That kept running through my mind as I crouched in the kitchen, a small handgun in my right palm. I found it in the main drawer next to the stove. Sid was now outside, taken by the people who I heard talking. I would get her back. I just needed to stay alive to do so. Come out, wherever you are, the lone man said. Sid had just gotten dressed in her sweats from June's house and came into the kitchen after her shower when the people burst in. They were normal looking like us, middle-aged, and seemingly in a panic to take the Jeep. That's why they took Sid. They wanted the Jeep and all our supplies. The Bigfoot will return, you know it, the older woman yelled outside the cabin door. Do you really want to risk sleeping here? No, give me the keys so we can all go. I didn't care what these people chose to do, but they weren't going to strand Sid and I. No way, no how. or take all our food and provisions. I needed everything we had, what little that was, to keep us alive. You didn't have to take her. Let her go, I shouted back. Desperation will make people do stupid things that you don't actually mean, and it can take a situation from 0 to 100 in a few seconds flat. I had to defuse this the only way I knew how to, by being forceful. Inhaling, I took the riskiest risk. Pointing the gun upwards, I made my way to the cabin door, flinging it open. Then I aimed. The woods are so cold in this region, Helga. It is. One of the worst forests to come in the winter. That's why I brought you here. Oh, of course. Helga and Bertrand walked gingerly through the snowy field that opened up from the thick woods. They were here on a day hike and were pretty far from their car. Did you read the Post this morning? Bertrand, before you came to pick me up and suggest this god-forsaken area. Oh, but I wanted to come, just for a bit. There was another story last week. 2 more went missing. Bertrand, are you serious? Let's go back to the car. Your fascination with this is too much. Okay. You aren't scared, are you? They turned in the meadow and began the miles-long trek back. Helga was visibly on edge, but stoic at the same time. No, what did it say this time? The Post. The snow began to softly fall as the clouds turned dark and the sun retreated behind the ebony curtain in the sky. Each step seemed to echo and bounce off the thick trees that surrounded them. In that moment, it felt as though they were the only 2 people alive for miles, and the heaviness weighed more than the clothing they wore. Bertrand? Helga asked as they made it back into the forest. What was the article name in the Post? Bertrand had sudden brain fog. He struggled to concentrate. His feet felt extra heavy then. As they stepped further along the path into the woods, the sensation lightened. The Post? He asked softly. What was the article name? Turning his head to stare at his tall blonde companion, he answered, Faces of Fear. And it was 2 women this time. Tourists. The end?